Hello, and welcome to Creepycore and Folklore, the show about creatures, encounters, old tales, and myths. I'm your host, Iona Wayland, a dark fantasy author, mental health professional, and overall curious person. I want to join other spooky souls and hear about these unusual stories. Hello, spooky soul, and welcome back. This episode is episode 16, where we're going to be talking about university urban legends. This is something that I've been thinking about a lot. Things that I've heard about growing up in, I'm going to say college town, but I grew up so rurally, I don't think it even counts as a college town, but we'll just go with that for now. I don't know if you have an experience of going to a college or a university or some sort of trade school, anything like that, or if you have high school experience, any kind of academia. I never really know how to say that word, honestly. But there seem to be a lot of spooky instances that kind of cross over from it kind of seems like no matter where you went to school, especially the more rural you are, that the urban legends, well, I guess I just said rural and then urban legends, but bear with me here. There are these little stories or tales that people will tell that are kind of like these spooky stories that apparently really overlap with a bunch of different colleges, universities, and academic settings. Also, in case you couldn't tell, I am not feeling well, and I put off recording for a couple weeks, but it's getting down to the wire here, and I need to record again. So I'm really sorry that I have a sick voice. I have my green and ginger tea here that's helping my throat not feel so gross, and I'm also feeling much better than I have been. Physically I feel a lot better, but I still have the sick voice, so thank you for bearing with me. So this is going to talk about academia and what it's like. I know that I've had some spooky instances and have heard even way more from people on campus, and then also in rental spaces off campus in the college town area. And I'd love to know what your experiences are on campus and if you've had any encounters there as well. So at my university, there were tons of ghost activity because of being close to the mines, railroads, very because it's in Appalachia, there's tons and tons of cliffs, stuff like that. I need to do an episode on Bigfoot because I don't think that Bigfoot is technically supposed to be in this area. But there were tons of Bigfoot sightings and then other unidentified mammal sightings and birds of prey that were not necessarily able to be recognized as local mammals or birds of prey. So that could be kind of scary and creepy. And there are also strange light type sightings and possible extraterrestrial contact that was made, landings, signs, things like that. And there were also snipes. I'm just kidding. That was mean. I don't know if anyone's familiar with the snipe thing. I've tricked people with snipe and snipe hunts. Also sink and sink hunts. So, okay, for anyone who's not familiar, what you do for someone who's not used to living in a rural community is you're all right, let's try and hunt some snipes. And you don't really say what it is, and you kind of let the person guess. So some people think it's a little animal or a bird or something, but you go out at night and you tell them to bring a trash bag or a pillowcase and a flashlight. And then you're okay, here's how you gotta go. Here, snipe, 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 snipe. Come on, snipe, 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 snipe. And you wiggle around the flashlight And then you kind of like, they just kind of freak themselves out. And then they end up knowing that it's a trick because you end up laughing. I never let it get like too far or anything like that. I did the same thing with sinks, like, because we lived in like a mining type town, there would be sinkholes. And so there would be these big signs that would say beware of sinks, especially like on next to trails or things like that. And so people would be like, what is a sink? And I'm like, oh, you don't want to, I mean, we can try and catch one later tonight if you want. They come out at night, but you got to be careful with them. They're like, oh yeah, let's try it. Lots of times people think sinks are like a type of snake, and people think snipes are a type of bird or mammal, like a muskrat, well, or like a squirrel or something. I don't know. It's very interesting what people's brains kind of fill in. And I'd be curious to know what you thought a snipe or a sink was when I first brought it up. Now I guess I gave you ammo to prank people, and I'm not sorry about it. Just make sure you're safe about it and you don't let it go on too long so you're not an asshole. But what I think was really cool is that there does seem to be like a lot of many common urban legends surrounding universities, colleges, academia, stuff like that. So here are a few that are observed in Vyara Pancheva's article. I'll have that linked in the show notes as well. But the first one that's included in the list is the quote Halloween massacre. So this is more listed in the Midwestern universities, but the story goes, I'm going to go through like the stories and then like the actuality behind each of these things that are listed in this article. But the story goes is that there was a psychic that predicted that on Halloween night, a masked man will enter a university that starts with the letter M or W that's located near a pond / lake / river / railroad track / cemetery and kill everyone there. So this hasn't actually happened. But I think the reason this one's so prevalent is that there's always going to be a university that's close to a pond / lake / river / railroad track / cemetery. It also sounds very ominous. And there are a lot of not great things that happen during Halloween and that have happened during Halloween in the past, especially on campus. There are like unsafe, I'm going to sound like such a prude right now, but I mean this like in the literal sense, not saying like you're not allowed to go and party, obviously. But like there are times when there are not great people who target other people at parties, and they wait and they're predatory and stuff. And so one of those times is Halloween parties, and with the whole like the veil is thin and there's lots of mischief around, and then people are wearing masks, and so they're like less identifiable. Like there are many layers to that, where there are many layers as to what would make maybe Halloween parties in particular a little more rowdy potentially, and why that would make things kind of like a little scarier, as well as like maybe on Halloween in general, like looking out for who might have ill intent when everyone's kind of on edge already, if they feel a little more sensitive during the Halloween time. So I think that's why that one is a little more on the prevalent side. The next one listed is the quote dead roommate rumor. So the rumor that was listed was like, if your roommate dies somehow, that you'll get like straight A's and you'll automatically pass your classes. The way it was presented in the article was almost like it was kind of like a charm or something. What I heard when I went to school, mine was more on the like legal side of like, if your roommate dies in like a really horrific way or a sudden way, that they would feel like your time at the university was distressing, and so like they would just like give you your diploma, I guess. They would just like give you your degree. That was like the rumor. Or another one that I heard was if you yourself had like a near-death experience, specifically like getting hit by a car on campus, that the university would grant you free tuition. All of the things I mentioned are untrue, and I'm really not sure how it started. The one that I brought up seems a little less sinister because it seems like someone misinterpreted like pain and suffering, or like this was distressing, and so like compassionately I was allowed like extra time for grieving or grades or assignments or whatever. That one seems like to make more logical sense to me. But like just hoping that your roommate dies so that you have like some sort of like good luck spell or charm on you so you get straight A's is a little sinister to me. I'm like, that's really awful. And I really don't know how it started, other than like just maybe this is like a really volatile time in a lot of people's lives being in university. And so I think that like when people are discovering themselves and really struggling, and they're like, it will take like a Hail Mary for me to get through these classes, their brain goes to weird places. Like, if I just get hit by a car, I'll get free tuition, and maybe that'll make it worth me flunking out of these classes. So another point that was brought up in this article was that the statues come to life. Apparently that they come alive at night and they'll move around on campus. Some say that they'll only move when a quote virgin or cheater unquote walks in front of it. First of all, I don't even know what virgin means. That is such a reductive term. I really don't understand what that even means. And I don't want someone to explain it to me either. And this also, the second thing that came up for me was it reminded me of the Haunted Graves episode, where there was a lot of fixation on like hetero relationships, virginity, and like this one is interesting because it brings up cheating. Like, what does that even mean? Like, depending on the person's like relationship shows what cheating is. Like, cheating can mean all sorts of different things to different people, but apparently you have to guess what it means to some random statue. I just think it's fun. I remember that like my university, I don't think had any statues, at least when I went there. So that wasn't really like a thing. We had more of the paintings come alive at night, or on Halloween, or the eyes follow you when you walk in front of them kind of thing. That was more along the lines of where the rumors were. And I think that's also a common one. It's not just statues. It's also like paintings and stuff. It makes me wonder, like, what is the most horrific statue that could come alive out of all the universities or colleges or campuses in all of the world? What's the statue that you would most likely want to come alive, and what is the statue you would least likely want to come alive? Because I'm thinking, like, for me, the least likely one is like some super old bigoted person to come back alive. It's like, come on, man, we were better off with you just like being like a silent stoic statue. And then maybe something coming alive is like, maybe like if there's like a university that has like a giant mascot that's really like cool. I don't know. I don't know enough about like mascots or universities to even take a guess as to what that would like, which one would be the coolest. But I would love to know your preferences and suggestions on which ones you'd like to see be like the ultimate one on the team, and which one you'd be like, this person sucks or this one sucks. Another common urban legend is that there are secret tunnels below campus. And okay, I have to say this. So before I get into this, if you have seen Avatar: The Last Airbender, then you already know what I'm gonna say. But it's that secret tunnel song. I always think of it So that's where my mind went. But apparently these secret tunnels are like rumored to go to all kinds of different places. So there are some that go to dungeons, there are some that go to ritual rooms. A more modern take on the whole secret tunnel thing is that they lead to some supercomputer. Some will even say that it's for like the elite alumni to return. They know where it is, and if there's like an end times, that they'll follow the tunnels to the underground system where the supercomputer is, or where certain like high-end information is, and they can start like a high-end society underground under the university. I personally would rather take on an apocalypse than return as an alum to this is so mean, underground, to as like almost like a perpetual college reunion. Like, oh my god, no. Apparently I'm upset about I'm not actually upset about my university experience. Like, it was a good experience and I wouldn't trade it, but it was a definite awkward time in my life, and there's lots of learning and growing that happened there. But it's funny because some of the whole secret tunnel thing is found to be true. So there are actually like steam tunnels underneath of certain universities across the US, at least, that helps with the heating system. I don't know enough about like heating systems and stuff to know how exactly that works, like how exactly the steam tunnels works, but it's supposed to be like a greener way to do that. I also like know that from my own experience, at least the place where I lived and where I went to school, which was very close to where I sort of grew up, was the Underground Railroad. And no, the Underground Railroad was not underground, but there were sometimes these really, I mean, it gives me goosebumps to think about their historical homes that have like hidden walls. And like I remember one of my childhood friends, his grandmother had this really old beautiful home, and it had like this little space in the wall that you could go into and a little space in the ceiling that you could go into, and that looked seamless. And she said that it was a part of the Underground Railroad. They would help if, in case you don't know what the Underground Railroad is, it's when slaves would run away and they would go to select houses that did not believe in slavery and were allies, and they would help the slaves escape and go north where slavery was not a thing. Well, to an extent, there's a whole other thing about that, but they would hide them out in the homes, but they would on the outside appear like a high society folk or a farmer folk, but behind closed doors they would be helping people escape. It was really incredible. And I do know that some universities were a part of that as well, and so there were like hidden rooms and things like that that were a part of it. So I don't know how. I do know this one particular friend's grandmother's house was a part of the Underground Railroad, which I think is very cool, and it still gives me goosebumps talking about it right now. Like, what a cool lady and what a cool history to have. And at the same time, I don't know how true that was for my actual university. And then I also know that during Prohibition there were these secret Kachu. Oh my goodness, he is very I don't know why I always say he's so snuggly today. He's snuggly every day, but sometimes he is like absolutely ridiculous with his love, which I would never trade. But he is all but knocking over the microphone right now. But during Prohibition, I know that there would be these like, not so much underground, but between walls and stuff like that. Well, I guess sometimes underground. That would be part of it. And of course that would happen on campuses. Are you kidding? Like, oh my gosh. Oh, I guess this kind of goes into like the elite alumni, which not always, but Sometimes there's always rumored to be those secret societies that some of them do exist, but they're rumored to be within fraternities, sororities, and it's like a subgroup of that subgroup will know where these secret meeting spots are. So that's always interesting. Another one is haunted universities. So, like, I know this one's very broad, but if you think about it, almost every university in the world is older than 100 years old. And so, there's a lot of history there for them to collect. So most have a specific ghost that's rumored to have like sightings, but there are also like many particular ghosts that overlap. So I'm going to list some of the ghosts that tend to overlap in these rumors. So there's often talks of a headless ghost. I have definitely heard that before. It can range anywhere from like, oh, they're riding on a horse and they knocked their block off, so to speak. I don't know. That doesn't, like, as a horseback rider myself, you don't usually just like randomly get your head chomped off, but I don't know. But there can also be a bunch of other things like that can make you decapitated, I guess. I'm not really sure. I guess we're just supposed to let our imagination run wild with that. Oh, definitely. I heard this next one, ghosts of former professors. Yes, absolutely. I would definitely hear rumors about like ghosts of former professors, like ones that show up and like let people in classrooms when they're like locked and they're not actually supposed to. I even had like a friend of mine, he was late to take a test or something, and there was another professor that was like, oh, did he lock you out? And he was like, yeah, I'm like just a couple minutes late. And he's like, that's not fair of him to do that. And he's like, yeah, like what the hell? And the professor was like, well, I'll let you in the back, just kind of sneak in there and do your thing. And he was like, okay. So the professor let him in, and like this other professor, he's like, I have a key, but don't tell him I did this. He'd be mad. And he's like, okay, I won't. I promise I won't. And it turned out like the professor that like unlocked the back door that let him in and he was able to take his test. The whole locking the door if you're not on time thing is so annoying, but whatever. I have many thoughts on that. Clearly, I still have panic nightmares about it, which is like kind of unacceptable that they put that level of pressure on people, but I'll put my soapbox away. Anyway, it turns out that the professor that let him in either looked a heck of a lot like, and he was never able to find the actual professor, or was the ghost of a former professor that like everyone loved, but he had died like really suddenly. And I've just thought that was like, if it turns out that that was a ghost, that was really sweet. That the professor kind of like was like, this guy's an asshole. Just go in and take your test. You're just trying to get your education. Jeez Louise. There's also rumored to be ghosts of students who have died in some sort of tragic way. I think that that's always really sad to think about, because like I was saying before, that like time on in a university is a space where a lot of people, it's the first time on their own, or it's the first time away from family, and or it's like their first time with full freedom, and that can feel really validating and empowering. So it can be some of like the best years of somebody's life of figuring out who they are and who they want to be. And at the same time too, it can be some people's worst times in their life because they're trying to figure everything out. And for someone to pass away so young, and so full of potential is always very sad. So I think that thinking about, students still on campus kind of walking around is kind of maybe a way for people to process such an early death for somebody. And I think that's always like an interesting take to have on someone who may have passed away early, and like a way to think about them still visiting with us. Here's one type of ghost that I haven't heard about, and you can tell me if you've heard of this kind of ghost before, are ghost builders. So these are ghosts that died during the construction of the university in question, or the college in question. I don't know. Maybe it's because No, the university I went to was pretty old, or certain buildings were. I don't know if there was any recorded evidence of that actually happening or not. I don't know. But that's something that I don't remember anyone talking about. I don't remember that being a rumor. I don't remember that being a folk tale type of thing. I don't remember anything like that. So I would be really curious to know if that's something that was rumored to have happened on campus for you or your university, or if you have friends of yours who went to like a school of some sort or academic setting of some sort, if they were talking about or had heard rumors about a ghost builder. I find that very interesting. That would also suck to be like, oh, I passed away doing work and now I need to do work. It's like, I don't know. I don't know. I'd rather have that me reading a book then, so I can eternally be reading a book or something or listening to music or like resting peacefully. I don't know. Something like that. I think that these were some pretty interesting ones. It got me thinking about like some of the weird ghost stories I used to hear on campus. Some of the stories that I would hear from people living off campus too. I definitely heard way more from people like renting from the old homes, because where I went to school specifically, like there were lots of old homes that were like 100 or 200 years old that were around that time frame, like built around the same time as the university and had old families living in it. I don't know. And I think it just gave more opportunity for hauntings. I don't know. And it was just interesting to hear about like, oh, this is so-and-so and he used to be the landlord here. This is farmer so-and-so. And I did research and it turns out the man I see walking in the middle of the street, that all used to be farm field, and I think it's a ghost of the farmer that's checking on his corn or something. Like it was very interesting. I think there was even one person who would hear like a bell, like a school bell ringing, and it turned out that one of the buildings on campus was like an old schoolhouse. So I felt like that was interesting too, to be able to hear those kinds of sounds. And it really does make me curious about any kind of stories you remember hearing when you went there, or if family members or friends went there, or if you went to some sort of like trade school, private school, it's any kind of like academic anywhere. I really want to know if any of the like urban legends kind of overlapped with your own experiences. That would be very interesting to hear about. Or if there were some that you thought of that weren't mentioned, I would also love to hear about that too. But I hope that you are not feeling sick, because this doesn't feel great. I hope that you have lovely warm drinks, whether it's hot chocolate, coffee, or tea, because I've been drinking all three and they definitely help, but I'm very caffeinated right now. And my throat is hopefully soothed for the time being. And I will talk to you next week. Thanks to all you spooky souls out there for listening to Creepycore and Folklore. Follow on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and TikTok if you're looking for more uncanny content. If you have your own tales to tell, you can email creepycoreandfolklore@gmail.com. If you liked this, please leave a review wherever you get your podcasts, or tell a friend who might enjoy these stories to spread the word. If you're interested in dark fantasy, check out my Hollowverse series. Ashes is available now in paperback and ebook on Amazon and audiobook on Audible, and the sequel is underway. I'm Iona Wayland, and I'll see you next time.